and welcome to Nurse Practitioner Television, powered by South Texas Crossfire and Lopez Broadcasting. We want to have a great show today, so we brought on a physician friend of mine and a great guy all around here in South Texas, providing quality medical care, and that's Dr. Mario Martinez. And let's go to that interview. Thank you for joining us, Doctor.
Hey, thank you.
Well, Doctor, I think we first should start off with your education, training, and background. Could you tell the audience a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I'm from Corpus Christi originally. My dad was in the Navy, so we lived in a lot of places. And then I graduated from college from Texas Women's University in Denton. The reason I went there, it had just become co-ed. The reason why is because they had the best science program in the area. And then I went to the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston for medical school and for residency. I did a residency in internal medicine there.
Tell me about, and I don't want to be corny or trite, it's just I'm so interested in why people choose medicine. What motivated you in your young life to enter into medicine? Was there anything personal that really drove you to do it?
Well, there really was. I was married at the time. And when my wife got pregnant with our first child, I decided I was going to go back to school. I had about 20 college hours that I had accumulated after high school. And so I was 34 years old, and I went back as a freshman. Initially, I was going to be a landscape architect or maybe a computer science major. But one of the first courses I took was a psychology course. And the professor handed out a list of the most respected professions, and at the top of the list was physician. So when I was 34, that was the first time I ever thought about becoming a physician. And I thought, if that's the best thing I can be, my family will be proud of me. It'll be of service to the community, give me financial security. And so just like that, when I was 34, I decided I was going to become a doctor.
And you finished up at the University of Texas Medical Branch at Galveston, and then you came back here, or was there sort of an interim somewhere else for residency?
No, I finished my residency when I was 46. And so what happened was I had planned on moving back to the Dallas area because when I moved to Galveston to go to medical school, I moved from the Dallas area. And so I planned on moving back there, and then what happened was, halfway through my third year of residency, I was praying. I was on my way home from the hospital, and I was having second thoughts about moving back to Dallas. And so I was praying. I was in my car by myself. I'll never forget it. And I said, God, where do you want me to go? And all of a sudden, on the radio in my car was the Robert Earl Keen song, Corpus Christi Bay.
Wow.
At that very moment. And so I pulled into my garage, closed the garage door, finished listening to the song. I walked in the house and I said, honey, we're moving to Corpus. She said, what? And I said, yep, we're moving to Corpus. And she said, okay. And just like that, I moved here.
My kind of lady. So when you moved back, you had the opportunity to see what the problems were in Galveston. And then here, what specifically did you see when you moved back here more than a decade ago, moved back here and you saw what was going on as far as people's medical needs?
Well, there's a lot of obesity in Corpus Christi, and with it, of course, there's a lot of type 2 diabetes. And in fact, it's an epidemic. Since 1980, there's been a 1,160% increase in the incidence of type 2 diabetes. And the reason why is because obesity and diabetes go hand in hand. And so there's a big epidemic of diabetes, not just here, but nationwide. Right now, 13% of the US population are type 2 diabetics. And some experts believe that if things don't change, by 2030, 30% of our population could be diabetics.
And when we're looking at that, you're looking at a paradigm shift in thinking about what the American Heart Association has said. You've taken a hard stance on, we have gotten it wrong for decades. The American public has been eating high carbs, low fat, and what has happened?
Well, the American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association, in fact, most of the health institutions in the United States since about this 1970 have been recommending a diet that's high in carbohydrates and low in animal fat. And we can see what's happened. In 40 years, there's been a 1,160% increase in type 2 diabetes. That's ridiculous. Now, some substantial things happened to our food supply beginning in 1980. Food manufacturers started using a lot of high fructose corn syrup, which is really cheap, and getting away from sucrose, which is pure cane sugar, which is really expensive. High fructose corn syrup bypasses the step where it's utilized for energy and it goes direct to fat storage. And that's why it's so damaging to the body. And then they also started using a lot of highly refined flour. So highly refined flour, what they do is they take the grain, the wheat, they take the husk off of it, which has fiber, and they take the germ out of it, which has vitamins and minerals, and they just use the pure grain, which is nothing but carbohydrates, which are chains of sugar molecules. So they take the high use of highly refined flour combined with high fructose corn syrup use. Those were two important changes in our diet and our food supply in the United States that began in about 1980. Also, people that raise animals for food started raising animals in more like a factory type of setting. In other words, in these big barns, these big sheds. And what's happened is the pork, chicken, and beef became cheap, and so thus we had the proliferation of the fast food industry. So the proliferation of the fast food industry combined with food manufacturers using a lot of highly refined flour and high fructose corn syrup, those three big changes in our food supply in the United States beginning in about 1980, that's what led to the obesity and the type 2 diabetes epidemic.
What can we do? I get this from a lot of our audience, primarily Latinos, and also people that are low socioeconomic background. I don't like to put labels, but people that don't have a lot of money say, well, the food is cheap that's out there. If I try to eat grass-fed stuff, it's way expensive. What can people do to modify their diet and reduce the chance of diabetes or make their diabetic situation better?
Well, actually, type 2 diabetes is reversible. The problem with the way we've been treating it, the way we've been trained as physicians to treat diabetes, is anything that causes your insulin level to go up is going to cause you to gain weight. So we've been fighting diabetes with a lot of medications that increase the insulin level in order to lower the blood glucose level. And the problem with that is people gain weight on that type of medication. Anything that increases the insulin level is going to cause you to gain weight. And so it's like fighting a fire by throwing gasoline on it. And so in my clinics, we've reformatted the way that we treat type 2 diabetes, and we're staying away from insulin and medications that increase the insulin level as much as possible. But type 2 diabetes is reversible. It's a dietary problem, though. That's what people need to understand. It's a dietary problem, too many carbohydrates and too much sugar. And so fighting it with pharmacological tools or weapons is not really the answer. The solution to the problem is change the way we eat.
And okay, so they go to the H-E-B on Port. There's nothing but on the shelves. We go to the H-E-B on the south side. We go to any fast food, Randall's, wherever in Houston, and you go and all you see is this high fructose corn syrup stuff, these processed foods, these really cheap meat products and chicken products. When we're visualizing walking down those shelves and we're thinking about your words, what do we do to combat this with the little money that we have to afford food?
You know, Joe, it's really simple. A good rule of thumb is this: if it wasn't around 10,000 years ago, don't put it in your mouth. In other words, cook at home, make it a fun thing. I've been doing a lot of cooking in my house. My mom lives with me, but I do most of the cooking, all the cooking. But anyway, I love to cook, and I have friends over, and we'll have some wine, and we'll make it into a really festive event. And the food is so much more delicious. So I recommend that people buy like a lot of fresh vegetables, fresh garlic, cook with olive oil, avocado oil, or coconut oil instead of these other oils like vegetable oil the oils are extracted with chemicals. Basically, the best rule of thumb, the easiest thing to remember, if it wasn't around 10,000 years ago, don't eat it and don't drink it. So drink water. You can have The best way to curtail the obesity and type 2 diabetes epidemic is to have one big meal a day. So that way, when you wake up, if you have, say, for example, like what I do on most days is I have one big meal at about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, something like that. When I get home from work, I cook and have friends over. Well, so the insulin level is key to your weight, whether you're going to gain weight, lose weight, or maintain your weight. So by eating one big meal a day, I wake up in the morning, my insulin level's low. And I don't eat all day, I just sip on water all day, have black coffee in the morning. Because even a Diet Coke will cause an increase in your insulin level. Diet beverages do that.
Poison.
It is, but it wasn't around 10,000 years ago either. And so my insulin level's low, then I eat a big meal, a delicious meal with fresh vegetables and usually seafood. I'm trying to stay away from pork, chicken, and beef because the way they're raised, their cortisol levels are high. They're given antibiotics, they're given steroids, and what happens is you eat that meat and you're ingesting all these products that are in their bodies. And so typical beef, chicken, or pork will cause your insulin level to go up because the animals are profoundly diabetic. Mm-hmm. So marbling in beef is a sign of profound uncontrolled diabetes. We make these animals into diabetics. And then you eat the beef, it causes an increase in your insulin level. And then guess what? That causes you to gain weight. So for the most part, I'm having a lot of fresh vegetables that I saute at home, salads, and then usually seafood. And it's been so much fun since I started doing that about 10 weeks ago.
And, you're not the only doctor who thinks this is the right way to go. Dr. Fung has started a revolution with a diabetes code or obesity code, I'm sorry.
Well, I've read 3 of his books, and one is the obesity code, one is the diabetes code, and he's a brilliant author. And everybody should read those books, especially the obesity code. The diabetes code is a little bit more technical, I think, more aimed for healthcare people.
We're going to take a little break, but just a last question. Like many people in South Texas, I'm overweight. I've come to see you. Other people have come to see you. You've got nurse practitioners working for you. This is a shoot for Nurse Practitioner Television, reaching over 100,000 nurse practitioners and here locally educating patients. But I can tell you, it takes some fortitude to come in and hear somebody tell you, you're fat, you're overweight. I mean, you're not going to say it that way, but you're going to say you are, the label obese. So, I mean, a lot of people don't want to hear that, or they're afraid to do their labs. What would you tell those people that are afraid to come in and see a doctor or to hear something negative in their mind? I know it can be scary, but what would you tell those people that feel they're frustrated, or maybe my dad was a diabetic, I'm going to be a diabetic, my children are going to be a diabetic? It's just inevitable.
No, it's not inevitable. It's not inevitable. Yes, there's a hereditary component to type 2 diabetes, but I mean, it's directly associated with obesity. So we have, the most, like I control my kitchen. I think in most households, the woman controls the kitchen. So, as a grandmother, for example, let's say that's my age, like I'm 59, I have a grandchild, beautiful granddaughter. But anyway, picture this scenario, a grandmother, 50-something years old, okay? What she does, the way she cooks and eats that's what her children are going to learn.
That's right.
And that's what they're going to teach their children. So we all have to make this change, not just for ourselves, but for future generations. I mean, in 10 years, it's estimated that 30% of our population will be type 2 diabetics. That's an astounding number. So we have to do it not just for ourselves, but for our families, for future generations of our families.
Well said. Thank you, Doctor, and we'll be back after these messages.
Okay.